I am going to think for a minute. My Cambazola Cupcake Puffs with pears and caramelized onions is one of my favorite recipes, and here is why. All my friends and family ask me to bring these when I'm invited over for a dinner party. But I will tell you, the only problem that you're gonna have is everybody's gonna eat way too many of these and they won't have room for dinner. So first we start out with a Vidalia onion or a Spanish onion, either one will work. And you just wanna cut off the stem about 1/2 inch. Then we'll go ahead and remove the outer skin. I love these onions because they have just the right amount of sweetness. So I am gonna make a cupcake puff made with Cambazola cheese and coppa, Italian meat, and with some pears, and we'll add these caramelized onions in there. But you can also put caramelized onions on a focaccia, super delicious. So I'm gonna cut my onion across. Now I'm gonna make 1/2 inch slices. And just cut across the rings. Now the other half. Okay, they're all diced. Now I'm gonna heat up my olive oil and my butter, and we're gonna start caramelizing. Start my flame, and I'm gonna add some butter. This is gonna give it good flavor. And I like to mix it with some olive oil. The olive oil has a higher smoke point, and we'll go ahead and let this butter melt. So here we're gonna add our onions to the pan, and we're gonna let this saute for about 10 minutes. So you may be wondering, what's the difference between caramelized onions and just sauteed onions? Well, when you saute onions, you're gonna do it on a higher heat and you're gonna cook it more quickly. Caramelized onions, you wanna cook it on a lower heat and you wanna cook it longer. This brings out the sugars and the onions and allows for the caramelization. You can use a Vidalia onion, that's my favorite, or a Spanish onion. Either one will work fine. Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes that you can make when you caramelize onions is trying to rush through the process. You want to start with medium heat for 10 minutes with the olive oil and butter. Then you want to reduce the heat slightly because you're going to add your salt and your sugar. And it really is a slow process. And you want to make sure to always stir. You don't want to burn the onions. Well, I'm ready to add the salt and sugar now, and the reason why I know I'm ready is because the onions are translucent and they're soft. And the color is perfect. This is the color that you're shooting for. Okay, so let's add some salt. Give that a stir. Now, don't forget now to lower the temperature. I've got it on low, but you can go medium low. And now let's add a 1/2 teaspoon of granulated sugar. Just sprinkle that evenly right over the onions. And now we're gonna cook these on low for about 30 minutes. I stay close to my onions and make sure to stir them often. So it's been 30 minutes. So I'm gonna increase the heat to medium and I'm gonna add the bourbon. And we wanna cook off some of the alcohol. So the bourbon is gonna add a nice sweet flavor to these caramelized onions. And we'll just simmer that just until it gets slightly reduced. So this is looking perfect, so I'm gonna shut the heat off. And now, this is an optional step, but I highly recommend it. The balsamic vinegar is gonna add some sweetness and a little bit of tartness to your caramelized onions. Let's go ahead and move it off the heat. And I'm gonna put a few grinds of fresh black pepper. And there you go. You got a nice batch of caramelized onions flavored with bourbon. Okay, so I'm gonna dice up a D'Anjou pear into 1/2-inch pieces. D'Anjou pears are perfect. They're mild, they're juicy, and they're sweet. Perfect for this recipe. So the first thing I do is I remove the stem, and then I'm gonna cut it into 4 pieces. I like to use a sharp chef's knife. So you got your 4 pieces. Now you can use a core or you can use a paring knife, and you wanna remove the core inside. This core works really well. I'm leaving the pear skin on, but you can remove it. Either way, it's gonna be delicious. So let's start cutting these into 1/2-inch pieces. I try to make them all uniform as best I can, but I also like the rustic look. There we go. Now I'll transfer our pear pieces right into a bowl, because then we're gonna move to the stove. We're gonna cook these pears on medium heat. So we're gonna add butter. Let's add a tablespoon of olive oil. Let that melt. Okay, the butter is all melted. Let's add our pear. And we're gonna add a teaspoon of fresh lemon juice. And we don't need to cook these very long. We just want them to be soft. So I like to stand near them and stir them frequently because I don't want to overcook them. These look perfect, so I'm going to take them off the flame and set them aside. Okay, so now I'm going to add fresh thyme to the caramelized onions. And I've got about a tablespoon.
Is that something we do later? Okay.
Caramelized onions, the pairings that I enjoy the most, sometimes I serve it with some goat cheese and some fresh basil. And today we're using Cambazola cheese and we're using fresh thyme. So both of those pairings are really good. I love using Cambazola cheese for this recipe. And it's a combination of Gorgonzola and Camembert. So I'm gonna dice the cheese, so I'll start off in slices and I'm gonna turn them into a 1/2-inch dice. It's gonna melt really nicely in my cupcake puffs. Okay, so I like how my cheese is looking. I've got a few bigger pieces, but a little extra cheese is good. I'm gonna dice the coppa into 1/4-inch pieces. So coppa is cured pork shoulder with a very rich flavor. I love it. Okay. We're ready to assemble our cupcake puffs. So I'm working with puff pastry, and you know what, there's so many good puff pastry brands out there. The key though is to make sure that you work with your dough right out of the refrigerator. It needs to be cold. So I just sprinkle a little bit of flour. There's some flour already on the dough, so we don't need to overdo it. I do like to flour my pin though. There we go. So we're gonna go ahead and roll this out, and we're gonna make 12 cupcakes. And the key is you don't want your dough sticking to your surface. So I just periodically check. I might add a little bit more flour. And don't worry if the dough rips, you can just pinch it right back together. I like to start from the middle and work my way out, using even pressure with your hands. Let's check and make sure it's not sticking. Perfect. You can even flip it over. It's looking good already. And if your dough ends up getting too warm, just put it right back in the refrigerator. Okay, it looks great. So I'm going to use a pizza cutter, and I like to use a ruler because then I can really get a good straight edge. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Just put a little bit of pressure on your ruler with your fingers. There you go. So now you got a nice square piece of dough to work with. Pat it down. Beautiful. Okay, so let's put our dough in the pan. So I've already sprayed my muffin tin with nonstick cooking spray. So now let's go ahead and get our puff pastry right in there. And they're gonna puff up in the oven, don't worry. They'll turn a nice golden brown too. So you can make the caramelized onions about a week ahead of time, and you can make your pears about the day before, and you can assemble them the morning of your party and then keep them in the fridge and just bake them so they're good and hot when your company comes. Okay, so I'm gonna start layering the filling. So let's start with the coppa. Just make sure to put an even amount into each cup. Love the rich flavor of coppa. That's looking good. All right, let's add the cheese. And what's so great about this cheese, it's so soft and creamy, so you can kind of mold it around the meat if you want. Which one of these are going to be happier with a little bit more cheese? Now for the bourbon caramelized onions. Just evenly place them right over the cheese. I wish you could smell these, so good. All right, let's make sure not to waste any of these onions. They're just too good. And now for the pears. There's something about sweet and savory together. Okay, so I have some egg wash here. I'm just gonna lightly dab the egg wash on the corners of the pastry. This will help them hold together when I pinch them together. Just a little bit. The rest of the egg wash will go on the top. Okay, these are coming together very nicely. So now I take opposite corners and I'm gonna bring the corners together and give them a nice pinch. See, and that egg wash really helps the dough stick together. Okay, now we got to put some egg wash all over the top. So the egg wash is going to really make these brown nicely, and you're going to get a little sheen as well. Okay, they look perfect. Now let's put them in the oven. Okay, make sure you've got your oven mitts on. I love my design. I've designed them to be extra long so you don't burn your forearms when you're pulling out a tray from the oven. Okay, oh, these look perfect. They're nice and golden brown. They're super puffy. I'm gonna set them on top of the stove and let them cool for about 5 minutes so it's easy to transfer to a platter. Okay, they're cool enough to handle, but still warm where the cheese is nice and melted. So let's go ahead and transfer them to a nice platter. These look amazing. They smell good too. Now I love to garnish these cupcake puffs. We start off with the honey, give them a nice drizzle. So you get a nice even drizzle. Look at that. Amazing. There we go. And now just sprinkle a little bit of fresh thyme right over the top. And there you go. Pretty and delicious. These are delicious. The dough is so crispy, and you've got that sweetness from the pear and the honey, but then you've got the earthy notes of the thyme. You've got the rich flavor of that coppa that's made with pork shoulder. And of course, those bourbon caramelized onions. Don't get me started. heaven.